A compact Android smartphone without compromises. Is this even possible? It turns out it is. Meet the Sony Xperia Z1 Compact, a phone that's unwilling to call itself mini because that would associate it with those other mini handsets by Samsung or HTC, all of which sacrifice performance for a lower price. Well, that's not what the Z1 Compact wants to be. It wants to be a high-end smartphone, having the same power like your massive Xperia Z1, Galaxy S4 or LG G2, only in a smaller body. I'm Ray, and in this Phone Arena video review, we're gonna take you on an emotional ride through the lengthy feature list of the Sony Xperia Z1 Compact. Let's see if there's anything to love in a 4.3-inch Android powerhouse. The Sony Xperia Z1 Compact is just the right size to showcase Sony's premium design in its finest form. Now that having a bit of an extra bezels around the screen isn't such a big deal as in the Z1, we're simply delighted to hold and interact with the classy exterior of the Xperia Z1 Compact. Both the front and back sides are made of durable glass, while the surrounding frame is made of stainless steel. As a result, the Z1 Compact is a beautiful product with a high-quality construction that can easily best most of the competition. The physical keys of the phone are mostly well made, though the volume rocker could be better. There's a small two-step camera shutter key that works just fine. Obviously, the Z1 Compact is way easier to hold and operate compared to those giant slabs that rule the market right now. You can easily work with this handset even with one hand only. If we have to compare the Z1 Compact directly to the iPhone 5S, we find that Sony's Marvel is just a bit bigger than Apple's fingerprint identifying Duo, but let's not forget the fact that the Compact sports a slightly larger screen. There is no denying, after so much time, going back to a 4.3-inch screen on an Android smartphone feels a bit weird, but this only lasts for a day or so. It's safe to say that readapting to a 4.3-inch panel is about as easy as it is to adapting to a 5-inch one. Sure, staring at the Z1 Compact's relatively small screen for longer periods of time may tire your eyes quicker than doing so with a larger display, but unless you are a very heavy user, the difference in the overall experience will be close to negligible. The Z1 Compact's display resolution is 720p, but this isn't really a compromise. At 4.3 inches, that works out to a fairly high pixel density of 342 ppi. The image looks incredibly clear, so the difference between what you get here and what you get on a 5-inch 1080p display is really negligible. What we are especially glad to report is that Sony has finally embraced IPS technology. It's a much needed tech in a modern smartphone, and we are glad that Sony has finally integrated this must-have feature. As any other popular Android smartphone manufacturer, Sony has its own custom user interface. We aren't in love with it, but we do have to admit that Sony's Android experience is more than usable. Most notably, it has this unified look across all menus and apps, which provides a sense of consistency and coherence. Running on top of Android 4.3, the custom UI is not so in your face, but it's quite comprehensive. In our opinion, this is one of the more polished custom user interfaces for Android. It's certainly not the most feature-rich one, but it's quite lively and pleasant to use. The custom home screen is very easy to get used to. Sony has done a great job at creating an intuitive experience that makes things like icon and widget placement or resizing easy as pie. The otherwise regular main menu sports a special options panel that can be accessed with a swipe from the left-hand side of the screen. This one is a bit irritating as you can accidentally reveal the panel while simply scrolling through the main menu. All of the essential apps like phone, contacts, messaging and so on have been customized here. They are quite simplistic and straightforward, which isn't a bad thing. Powered by the potent Snapdragon 800 SoC, the Sony Xperia Z1 Compact is a true beast, despite the fact that its size is not as imposing as that of other high-end Androids. Performance will never be an issue with this handset. Overall system performance is also great, probably even better than that of the Z1 due to the lower screen resolution. The Z1 Compact's Snapdragon 800 CPU is a quad-core great 400 bits that can run at up to 2.2 GHz. Meanwhile, the Adreno 330 GPU is a worthy companion with its superb processing power when it comes to graphics. You can easily run every game out there and you will enjoy sky-high frame rates at all times. Sony has installed the healthy 2 GB of RAM on the Xperia Z1 Compact, which guarantees smooth performance even when you have multiple heavy apps running in the background. The Compact comes with 16 GB of internal storage, but thankfully it also gives you the option to install a microSD card for additional storage space. Unlike many other popular Android manufacturers, Sony isn't bundling its own Android browser, meaning that Chrome is the only browser available on the Sony Xperia Z1 Compact out of the box. For most users though, Chrome will be all they need, as it tends to perform lovely on this device. Plus, it's always weird to see a phone ship with multiple internet browsers. As always, loading is super fast with mobile Chrome, while navigation around pages, including scrolling and zooming, is very fluid and trouble-free, though I have to admit that pinch zooming is not the best possible implementation here. LTE is supported across numerous bands, so as long as your carrier of choice offers 4G, the Z1 Compact should have access to those blazing fast data speeds. The beefy 20.7 megapixel G-Lens camera of the Sony Xperia Z1 Compact has absolutely the same characteristics as that of the Z1, which is a great technological achievement by Sony to fit the same sensor in a considerably smaller body. The great thing about the G-Lens camera is that it not only fits a great number of pixels, but those pixels actually have a pretty good size of 1.4 microns. This has been made possible thanks to the large 1/2.3 inch sensor. Meanwhile, the aperture of the camera is quite wide at f2.0, which allows the camera to capture more light. Finally, the Z1 Compact has a wide-angle lens of 27mm that will let you capture more of the scene in front of you, which is useful if you're shooting in a small room, for example. The camera's user interface is very easy to use, especially when you're sticking with Sony's superior auto mode, which attempts to automatically pick the best settings for you depending on the scene you're trying to photograph. Still, Sony has also included a manual mode, which allows you to tweak a variety of different settings on your own. There are also some other interesting camera modes in the Xperia Z1 Compact. For example, there is Info Shot, which will attempt to give you useful information about the object that you're photographing. Or there is also Social Live, powered by Bamboozer, which lets you live stream up to 10 minutes of video directly to your Facebook feed. We're happy to say that, just like with the Z1, this 20.7 megapixel camera doesn't disappoint. Quite the contrary, images tend to have very realistic, vivid and lively colors. At the same time, the handset doesn't oversaturate or overwarm them artificially in order to make them look prettier. Exposure is also pretty good most of the time. The dynamic range is good enough to let you take immersive photographs that feature both darker and lighter areas, and it will all look natural and appealing. If you view the 20.7 megapixel photos in actual size, you might dislike the mostly pixelized look, but if you scale these gigantic images down to something like 13 megapixels and compare them to awesome 13 megapixel photos such as those from the G2, you will be surprised to find that the Xperia Z1 Compact actually captures very detailed images. Actually, this is something that the Z1 Compact does by default, as the superior auto mode, which is the default mode for shooting with the Z1 Compact, takes images in 8 megapixel size. Still, for those of you who just need to have those 20 megapixel photos, there is the manual mode. Unfortunately, similar superlatives cannot be said about the Xperia Z1 Compact's night photos. The handset often messes up the exposure, while colors are also somewhat off. The only thing we can do right now is to hope that Sony will improve this aspect of the camera with a future software update. On the other hand, we simply love the images that the Z1 Compact takes indoors. Photos have a great sense of depth and detail with very realistic and pleasing colors. When it comes to video recording, this surely isn't the best camera we've seen. The 1080p video is fine, but it lacks some fine detail. With its relatively small screen, the Z1 Compact isn't an ideal phone to watch video on. The display looks very good in all of its IPS glory, and while watching a short video every now and then is more than satisfying, we don't really think that it's very comfortable for longer experiences, such as watching a full-length movie. The Walkman music player is quite cool and simplistic. It sports some interesting features like Clear Audio Plus, which aims to give some more clarity to the sound, though it's basically a specific EQ preset. There are also some other sound enhancing tools like xLoud, as well as a regular equalizer with many presets, including a custom option, allowing you to set your own equalizer. The Z1 Compact has a pretty decent loudspeaker. Just be sure to turn the Clear Audio Plus option on, because otherwise the sound is quite dull and lacking in high frequencies. Sony has produced a fine piece of equipment for phone calls with the Z1 Compact. Its earpiece is pretty loud and relatively clear. There's just a bit of distortion that can be heard in the sound, but overall things sound very well. Meanwhile, your callers will be treated to an equally good sound thanks to the Z1 Compact's quality microphone. Due to the small size of the handset, Sony has been unable to fit a very big battery inside the Z1 Compact. Still, with a 2300 mAh battery and with its relatively small screen and lower resolution, we think users won't be experiencing insufficient battery life with the Z1 Compact. With the Xperia Z1 Compact, Sony has made an important move that will make its smartphone lineup considerably more approachable. The Z1 is a powerful and well-rounded product, but its imposing size meant that there will undoubtedly be a lot of people who would prefer to go for something a bit more pocketable. Now that the Compact is here, and the number of fresh colors at that, these users will have such an option with Sony. The latest high-end Xperia phone is a beauty to behold, and with its superb features and characteristics such as the awesome 20-megapixel camera, it's actually the first modern Android phone that can offer a top-notch experience in a compact shell. Whether it can be a viable alternative to a regular 5-inch flagship, that depends on the type of consumer that you are. If you can't take your eyes off your phone screen, then maybe you should hold on to the larger display, as it will make your life significantly more comfortable. On the other hand, if you're more of a casual user that would still like to have access to a premium smartphone experience, the Z1 Compact will be a great choice, especially when you have in mind that it will also be easier to carry around. Meanwhile, if you have to compare the Z1 Compact to the iPhone 5S, which is another premium offering in roughly the same size class, we would say that the Compact is very well made, but we have to admit that the iPhone 5S is even more eye-catching thanks to its slimmer profile and lack of so many ports and slots around its sides. And really, there is a lot of action going on across the metal frame of the Z1 Compact. So while the iPhone 5S stays true to its beautiful minimalist style, the Xperia Z1 Compact remains true to its Android nature, which means that it just has to offer you all kinds of useful options, like a microSD card slot, a separate port for charging dock, and a dedicated camera shutter key. At the end of the day, the Xperia Z1 Compact is not only a great Android smartphone, it's simply a great phone, all things considered. Thank you for watching our video review of the Xperia Z1 Compact. If you'd like to learn more about it, check out our website and our in-depth review at phonearena.com.